Okay, so now we are going to set up the program to use the software which is going to collect the data for your FPLC experiment. First thing we're going to do is double click on FPLC Director to start the program that should connect with the FPLC. The only username on here is FPLC user, so we will click that and click OK. And the first thing we're going to do when we open it up is to flush the column. So we're going to flush the column with high salt buffer, which comes again from pump B, which means, we are going to scratch that. We are going to flush the column with low salt buffer because that will allow all the proteins to come off the column. So that means we want to have, we are going to click on manual, pump, and then we have conc B. So we're going to click on const B. We're going to set the concentration of B to 0 because that's the high salt buffer. That means we'll have all low salt buffer. So that's what we're going to start. We're going to flush the column with low salt buffer. Okay. Then you're going to wait until the column is flushed. And once you set the concentration of B, then you're going to turn the pump on. And to turn the pump on, you're going to again click manual, pump, and then you're going to go down to flow A and B. And now we're going to change the flow to whatever you want to flush it. How about 2 mils per minute? And then we click OK. All right, so that turns on the pump. The pump is now pumping. We can walk over here and see that, in fact, this is moving. It's moving because it's all A. B is not moving. It's 100% of low salt buffer. Okay. So then we are going to switch to, after we have flushed the column for about 10 minutes, we are going to switch to 100% B, same way as we set the other one. Now we have 100% B. Why do we want to flush now with 100% B? Is because we are going to load our sample when the buffer is at high salt, because then the protein will stick to the column. So we flush our column for about 10 minutes with the high salt buffer. And meanwhile, you can look down here and see this blue line on the computer screen is monitoring the ultraviolet absorbance at 280 nanometers through this optical unit. So as you recall, proteins absorb at 280 nanometers, so we should see a peak when we load our sample onto the column. Okay, so how does that work? First thing we're going to do is we are going to inject our sample. How do we inject the sample? There's a loop here on this valve. This loop goes in on this side, around, and goes back in on this side. There's nothing in this loop. All it is for is to inject our sample. So the volume in the tubing on this loop is exactly 1 milliliter. So we will inject our sample. So note that we have our sample here in the syringe that has a lure fitting, and we can screw it onto the lure fitting on the valve, and it's fill your syringe with 1 milliliter of your sample, and then we're going to go up here to manual, and we're going to go to flow path, and then we're going to click on valves. All right. So when we go to valves, we can now click set. All right, and we can inject our sample. And note that it's going to go into the loop, and you can see the loop turning green. It's not very obvious now, but there's going to be some dribbling, and that's dribbling is going to be any liquid that was already in the loop. Okay, so now we are set. We're going to hit exit, and now we're going to run our program. Okay, so we are going to open our method, and we are going to double click on this program that's called Nemogra1, Nemogra1. Double click on that method, click OK, and we're going to click Run. Name the sample something that's relative to you, such as my name. Okay, okay. And we're going to start. Okay. All right, it is now going to save the data in the computer. Now watch really quickly, I'll show you what happens here just for a minute, and then from here you're going to figure out what to do. If you heard that little click and there's a little pink arrow on the screen, it just now is injecting your sample. So we can watch our sample go through the system when we can watch the sample. You know that the sample has loaded because we can put the ultraviolet light on it and see. As you see here, if you can see, if you bring the camera close there, the sample is now loaded at the top of the column, and when I shine the ultraviolet light on it, we see that the green fluorescent protein is there. Green fluorescent protein has a lot of hydrophobic spaces on it, so that means it doesn't take much for it to stick. The other proteins in the sample are going to flush through the column. So we can follow the process of this now on the screen, and we can follow this, and we should see at some point a peak of proteins coming through, and using this ultraviolet lamp, we can see when this starts to come down, and at that point we're going to start to collect fractions of our sample, of our product. Okay, the sample, what you're going to want to do is find in a box underneath here. I'm hoping they're in this box. No. Okay, not to worry. I will provide you with tubes. Don't worry. I've got tubes over here. So I have a box full of tubes, and what you're going to do is set up these tubes on a rack. Okay. So if you can, I don't know if Courtney, can you see the peaks coming off the column here?
Yes.
These are proteins there. And we're going to get a rack. Those are proteins that we don't want. Those are garbage. We don't want the garbage. We want the proteins. Okay. So we'll set up a rack, and we will collect our sample in these tubes. But we're going to wait until this green on the column starts to come down, and then we'll do the collecting the samples, because we don't really care. This is all garbage. This is all proteins from our cells that are not the protein that we are trying to collect. So I'm going to sign off now. I think you have enough information. Once you collect, I believe that you can collect 4 milliliter samples here. When the green starts to come down, you're going to collect the samples, and you're going to measure the absorbance, and you're going to measure the absorbance at 280, and you're going to measure the absorbance at 397. And since green fluorescent protein absorbs at 397, unlike other proteins, this is a way of distinguishing between our protein of interest, the green fluorescent protein, and the proteins that we don't want that are coming off the column. These proteins here absorb at 280, but they do not absorb at 397. Okay, thank you.